It all began January 7th of 2002. Tony Kalman and I, we were set to see the WWF in Madison Square Garden, the first Raw of the year where Triple H came back after missing most of 2001 with a surgery on his quad. That night, before we went into the building, someone was giving out flyers for USA Pro Wrestling, which took place at the Elks Lodge on Queens Boulevard that Friday night. I had already made plans with other friends to go to WWF New York that Friday, so Tony saw the show by himself. And while he was there, he got a flyer for ICW's first ever. Well, I'm sorry, it was their 1 year anniversary show, which took place 2 weeks later, and he told me about it. And for years, Tony wanted me to come to see ECW live at the Elks Lodge, but he warned me about I'd have to stand all night if I didn't like show up early and wait in line, and I don't think I wasn't been able to do that either, folks. So ECW had ended. So, as a way of getting Tony off my case, I did it to get. I went to the show, and we had a great time, and that's where I kind of got hooked, and great show seeing the buzz of the indies at the time, which was Low Key, The Amazing Red, The Hit Squad, and so many people who were on that show. Also, that year I had the second ICW show. I ended up meeting Randy Corelli, the man who I nicknamed Mister Everywhere. Also, went to my first USA Pro Wrestling event, and I think Georgette Siciliano went to those first three ICW shows that year. Later that year that first show was first ever Alpha Pro Wrestling event, which may or may not have had the record for the smallest crowd in the history of that building for a wrestling show, because they never did do another show after that. But that very night, Frank Goodman, who runs USA Pro, walked right by Tony and I. And Tony sees him. He says, "Mask Maniac!" And Goodman's response was, "Where?" And a week after that Alpha Pro show, USA Pro Wrestling had done a show at the Elks Lodge, and then it was the very first time I had gone to one of their shows for something USA Pro was basically became notorious for. The show had 14 matches, no intermission, and the show ended around 12:30 in the morning. There were other shows they've done along the way as the years go on that they would do shows till 12:45 in the morning, even as late as 1 a.m. But that was 2002 for you, folks, so far. But the year 2003, USA Pro Wrestling ran at the Elks Lodge, and during a match pitting Mike the Shooter Cruel and the highlight Billy Real, Reil, during their matchup, they actually did a segment earlier in the show to set up a match late for this for the match. Cruel and Real are outside on the floor, and Real was about to be whipped to the guardrail. Instead of turning around and allowing his back to brace the impact of the guardrail, Real like flipped over the guardrail, and his back like got me in the side of the head. And folks, I admit I did get my bell wrong, and kudos to referee Sean Hansen for checking to see if I was all right. The very next day, I thought I had like a huge headache. I thought I might have suffered a concussion from that. The next month, Ring of Honor, which at the time was run by Rob Feinstein, had their first 1 year anniversary show featuring the infamous Riot, where most of the LIWF wrestlers, namely Julius Smokes, the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Latham, the Tower of Torture, they got into it with Steve Corino, Samoa Joe, C.W. Anderson. I don't know if Michael Shane was part of that group yet, and a women's wrestler known as Simply Luscious. That same night, we had it actually went on last. It was a mother of all scramble matches as Special K, which was this group. I don't know why Rob Feinstein named them after a cereal of all things. And What I'm saying is, they were acting like a bunch of partiers and ravers. That was the gimmick of that faction. As they did battle with Mikey Whipwreck, the Hit Squad, Divine Storm, and the SAT. Although Whipwreck turned on his team actually won the match. But really late in this matchup, this match was, you would think, was kind of like a spot fest if you saw this match yourselves or if you were even there. But the point is, the SAT hit someone with a Spanish fly. I thought that was going to be the end of the match, and when it wasn't, I was livid. And there was one guy standing in the back right by the window. He threw a chair down on the floor, and he screams, "Hurry the fuck up, man, I gotta take a piss." Yeah, add that to the files of thanks for sharing, folks. And thankfully, at that point, I'm yelling, "This was a great show. Everybody's going to buy the video/DVD. We want to go home." And a short time after that, Dan Moff nailed one of them with the burning hammer off the top or second rope, ending the match and the show. And even though it didn't run as long as USA Pro Wrestling, we were like thrilled that it was over and everybody got out of there. Okay, the following month, USA Pro Wrestling was at the Elks Lodge, and it was the first and only time I sat in the balcony for a show because so many fans got there before me, and there was really nowhere for Tony Calvin and I to sit and, to sit together. So we just took our chances and we sat in the front row of the balcony. Only time I got to sit in the balcony at a show in that building. The following week, ICW returned from a hiatus, and they were doing shows at the Ukrainian Hall, or the Ukrainian Center in Passaic, New Jersey. And Jack had rented a school bus for the trip, where people could either get picked up by his first store, which used to be on Horace Harding Expressway, or wait outside the Elks Lodge on Queens Boulevard. Tony and I waited outside the Elks Lodge, and we were wondering what was taking the bus so long. And I saw like a lot of traffic on Queens Boulevard. And I see running from one of the side streets, Rob, a.k.a. Nick Knowledge, telling us, to come to the side street and get on the bus. Because I guess the bus couldn't really stop in front of the building. And the thing was, aside from the fact it was a school bus, the reason it took so long to show up, it turned out that someone who said they wanted to be picked up at the store was waiting outside the Elks Lodge the whole time. But, there weren't too many people on this bus trip anyway. But it made up for it the following month, which was ICW had another show at that building in Passaic. We had more people on the bus this time, with the exception of Tony. There was like two other guys that were waiting outside the Elks Lodge. And unfortunately, this time the wait for the bus wasn't long, but they stopped, like, instead of making a U-turn and come get us, they made us cross Queens Boulevard. I think it stopped right by where the KFC used to be. I miss eating there before shows. And, wow. And, we all made it, but the bus driver, he couldn't find the damn street the place was at. And if that wasn't bad enough, that was where I saw Sean Connor, known to many as Unofficial Artist, was on that bus trip. And I got more dirt and juice on that guy as we go along with this video, folks. And there were these good-looking ladies. I don't know if Ariana Hilario was on this bus trip or not, but at one point, I think after the fifth time the driver stopped trying to ask for directions to the street. The people on the bus, they're going five times. He stopped a sixth time, and somebody said he's going for Harley Race's record. And then eventually one of the chicks says, "Why couldn't Jack do this shit at the Elks Lodge?" Eventually we get there, and Boy, what an awesome show it turned out to be. Of course, as I said, I had more on Sean Connor. Well, at this show, one Monster Mac issued an open challenge, and out came the mime, and Sean like fell on the floor laughing. Later that night, the Christopher Street Connection, Mace Mendoza and Buffy did battle with Hot Commodity members Easy Money and Julio De Niro. And Buffy, who acted the most gay of the Christopher Street Connection, the ladies who were on the bus, they were telling Sean to kiss him on the mouth, and I had the show still on videotape, and but right before they kissed, and they did kiss, they took the camera off them, and the camera sees the chicks screaming and applauding that. Also, that night, there was a match just before it got underway. Joey Matthews was challenging Billy Reel for the Super J or Super Juniors Championship. Joey managed to get the belt before the match even got underway, and Billy tells Joey, "You didn't beat me fair and square." At one point, people were chatting asshole at Billy. At one point, he says to one of those chicks from the bus trip, he says to her, "You talk to your mother with that mouth?" And in response, she says, "No, bitch." Clear as day on the videotape again. Yeah, we had such a time at that very show. The following month, ICW came back to Queens for a show called Back on the Boulevard. During the main event between Steve Corino, Homicide, Jerry Lynn, and Just Incredible, Homicide ended up on the floor. Forgot what happened to him in the match. And there were these guys that he landed right in front of these guys that were sitting in the crowd, and they had a bunch of signs, and they even had like a microphone that you would plug into an amplifier or a speaker, and they tried to get wrestlers to speak into their microphone throughout the night. One of them took one of his signs, he tried to drape it over Homicide, who was down, place it over Homicide, who was still down on the floor, selling somebody's offense or somebody's move. Homicide started to move, and those guys panicked, and then Atlas Security stepped in, told those guys to get out. Those guys eventually came back in. Atlas told them get out, and told them get out. They came back in, I guess, a third time. Well, second time, yeah, came back a second time, and one of the guards put one of those poor schmucks in a nerve hold, and I don't know if he got thrown down the staircase. But when the show was over, and I'm downstairs, I see Jack Sabbath by his merchandise table, and I saw a police car outside. So I'm guessing those guys were had called the cops, and they tried to press charges for the whole incident. Let's see. Oh, the following month, we're up to June 2003, in case anybody's lost track. I don't think anyone is really care. They want to see this video. June, it was so fucking hot at the Elks Lodge that night. I mean, it's kind of like dampens me about going to shows in buildings that have no air conditioning in it, especially considering the USA Pro was running until 12:30, 1 o'clock with their shows. Should be noted, I had bought a Patriot mask the same night of the Billy Reel incident. Let me see here. Along the way, I met Alex, the guy who kind of looked like Matt Hardy a little bit, and his friend Duran Gilmore, who has since passed away. Let me see. Oh, the following month, ICW presented Maximum Impact, headlined with Abdullah the Butcher against Lowlife Louis Ramos. No, guys, that didn't go on last. I mean, that match is on YouTube. But the funny thing was, I remember looking out the window during the show, and I saw like thunder out there. So apparently it began to rain while the show was going on, and by the time the show had ended and I got out of there, the rain stopped and like the streets were all wet. Okay. All right. The following month, August 2003, USA Pro Wrestling had a show at the Elks Lodge, and there was a tag team match pitting Trailer Park Trash. I forgot which two wrestled, but that consisted of Nuke, Tony Burma, and the late Southern Vinny Stylin. Well, what happened was, as they're coming out, I'm trying to write down in my first book, which I don't have today, unfortunately. I'm trying to write down their names, and Vinny, he like grabbed a hold of my pen, tried to rest up my handwriting, and I'm like struggling to just pull away. And they ended up losing to the Solution. I forgot which two members it was, but they lost to the Solution, Papa Don, and Havoc. And also, a few weeks before that show, I had bought a blue bag with a handle on it. You know, that's it's kind of like a luggage bag. It was blue, but sadly, I ended up retiring that bag years later, and you'll find out why as we go along. Okay, let me see. Following month, September 2003, USA Pro Wrestling has an event during a match between the all-around best Xavier and Deranged. Well, what happened was Tony Kalman, for those who have not met him yet or did meet him over the years, every time wrestling matches would come outside the ring, Tony's constantly yelling, over here, over here, over here, like 5 zillion times a show, seemingly. I know that was his gimmick. And Xavier notices him and he says to Tony, put your foot up. And he did. He threw Derange's face right into Tony's, well, not his bare foot, but you get the point, folks. And I believe that, and that very show, by the way, my goodness, this is why I wish USA Pro didn't run their shows too long, because the show ended like, I think 12:45, 5 a.m., I think, because I had to go home, get some sleep, because the next morning, tickets went on sale for WrestleMania 20, which took place in the Garden. And I might have a story on that some other time. But 2 months after that, November 2003 was the last hurrah, how sad it was, of the last time wrestling would ever be held in the Elks Lodge on Queens Boulevard. Now, I warned Tony and others. I said, look, I'm not gonna stand outside and freeze my ass off, push and shove and fight my way through the door to get in the building. And this was a big mistake on my part, because my brother and I, I guess there was a line outside before we got in. And unfortunately for my brother and I, the show was already in progress. Didn't find out until after the fact that we missed the first match. And there was nowhere to fucking sit. And, it sucked having us, we paid $25 instead of having a front row seat where we were stuck standing. And, it was sad. It was the last show ever. But, I remember telling my departed mother, mom was still with us at the time, and I told her what happened. And she said, oh, I would have. And, granted, she wasn't a wrestling fan, folks. But she said to me, I would have walked out. And I told her, that would have been money down the drain if we walked out and missed and forgot about the show. And she even said, your friends couldn't let you and your brother sit for an hour? And, after the show ended, thankfully the Dunkin' Donuts right by Grand Avenue train station was still open because I needed to sit down somewhere. And during the show, they ran out of water. Of all things. They ran out of water. I mean, they did sell beer there, but I wanted a bottle of water, and they ran out by the time I went to go buy one. Man, oh man, oh man. Okay, now we're up to the year 2004. Okay, USA Pro Wrestling ran a show on Valentine's Day of all days. And Anthony DiBlasi, a.k.a. Anthony the Funker, a.k.a. Don Tony, there was a bus trip from the Elks Lodge to the show that took place out at Sport Time. I don't know if that place still exists, over in Bethpage in Nassau County. Of note, I forgot to mention about the last show at the Elks Lodge, there was a guy dressed up as the late Michael Jackson there. Fans were chanting, Michael Jackson. I even went so far to chant, child molester. Well, Michael was on the bus trip with us, as was Alex, the late Deron Gilmore. I remember Lowlife Louie, and I think a few other wrestlers were on that bus trip too. The bus driver, well, the bus that took us to the show, I don't know if it was the same bus or the same driver or not. He had the oldies, CBS FM, which at the time was an oldies station. And you wouldn't believe it. Among songs were playing were the Kingsmen's Louie Louie, and sadly Lowlife Louie Ramos was like standing outside waiting for somebody, I guess, to come from Grand Avenue train station to get on the bus. He didn't hear the song. But while we were heading out there, they played on the radio station was "I've Had the Time of My Life," which was the theme of the movie Dirty Dancing, and you know, I wound up having a good time at this show. But one particular thing it was also memorable for was the first and I guess only Frank Goodman. I could be wrong about this. First and only Miss USA Pro Wrestling pageant. And after that segment ended, Dexter Weiner, I'm not sure how he pronounced his name, might not have been his real name. He announces to the crowd that they were going to take an intermission. So I got up and I was going to buy merchandise from one of the tables. Goodman grabs Dexter and he says, "What the fuck you think you're doing? We ain't going to have an intermission." And at that point in time, I just walked away. Now, folks, it's stuff like that makes me glad I stayed in the crowd. Because whether or not Dexter was getting paid, I would have stopped what I'm doing and just walk out. It's one thing to be professional, but, nobody's got a right to be getting physical with you like that. No matter what the situation, whether you're just a fan of the crowd or you're working on a show. Whether you're a ring announcer, referee, wrestler, even promoter, you get the whole shebang. After this show ended, when we all got on the bus, went back to Queens, and we went to eat at the White Castle right by Queens Center Mall. And there was and keep in mind, this was past 1 a.m. at this point. And these teenagers, they come inside. One girl comes in through the door, sees Michael Jackson. She screams, runs out the door. Then she comes back inside and says, "Oh man, this is Valentine's Day, not Halloween." And let's see, who I remember seeing there. It was Alex, Duran, a friend of theirs. I didn't get his name. Tony Kalman was with me. Tony's departed friend, Terrell. I wish he was still with us today. Michael, as I mentioned. Oh, and Ivan Rothstein, a.k.a. Captain Ivan. What happened was Alex asks Michael, "Do you dress like that all the time?" It's Michael, he's getting all the damn attention. I'm glad he was. And at one point, Ivan had said, "Hey, if he grabs his crotch, I'm leaving." I don't know if he did that, folks, because I don't know what actually happened, because eventually 2 a.m. arrived, and then I decided to take my leave and head home, and man, I got home after 3 o'clock in the morning after all of that. Okay, 2 weeks later, which was February 28th of 2004, was my very first time experiencing Jersey All Pro Wrestling. And this was their second show from the Rahway time. The second time they ran at the Rahway Recreation Center. They first debuted there in December 2003, but I missed that show. But on this very show was my first time seeing Teddy Hart, as he got the ass kicking of a lifetime from the man who I consider Mr. Independent Wrestling, the notorious 187 Homicide. And it's not just because he's from Brooklyn either, folks. Because that guy's been around way before independent wrestling was cool, before independent wrestling reached the very level or plateau it is on today. You get the point. But man, that was I had heard the buzz about JEP for so many years, especially when they ran an old charity hall in Bayonne, New Jersey, which I understand eventually got turned to a liquor store. I don't know if it's still a liquor store today because I've never been there. And quite a funny thing is, a week later, which was March 6, 2004, they had a fundraiser in South Plainfield, New Jersey. After the first JEP show I went to, I talked with promoter Fat Frank Idavia, rest his soul. Sadly, he passed on too. And, I told him I mailed a money order to the post office box, and, the tickets didn't come in the mail, so I gave him my home number because, I didn't have a cell phone at the time. And you wouldn't believe it. The day of the show comes, and his booker, Ray Sager, calls me and says, "Hey, we got 2 front row tickets for you. Just come on down." And Tony was going to go with me to this very show, but I couldn't get a hold of him. He couldn't get a hold of him. Couldn't get a hold of him. And I say to Mom, there's 2 front row tickets waiting, and they're paid for. And she says to me, "Take your brother." So I had to take him with me. And what a long and winding road that was to get there. we had to take the train from home into Manhattan, took a train from Penn Station, had to get off in Newark Penn Station, take a train from Newark Penn Station, get off in Plainfield. And again, I didn't have a cell phone with me at the time. I didn't have a cell phone yet. Luckily, there was a taxi cab parked across the street. I called the number on the payphone, and it turns out the gentleman driving the cab, I don't know if he was just getting on duty or just getting back on duty from a break, and he sees my brother and I, and there was, I think, a lady out there. And he asked, "Oh, did you call?" And I said, "Yes," and drove us to South Plainfield where the show was taking place. And, a short time after sitting down, Ray Sager announced to the crowd that the cafeteria was open, but if anyone wanted to go get something to eat or drink, they had to eat or drink it in the cafeteria. So I went in there first, and then eventually showed my brother where it was and let him go there, and he went to get his food and drink. And then after a while, I was concerned, thinking maybe he got lost or maybe he went to a bathroom. So I went try to go back there to find him. He comes right out of the cafeteria, and then eventually the show got underway. Sadly, Frank, rest his soul again, he was kind of to let us use his cell phone, but the taxi service that we took to the show, we couldn't get through, couldn't get a hold of him. There was no answer from a dispatcher. And one of the police officers out there was kind of to call us a taxi service to take us back to back to the Plainfield train station. And by the way, kudos to that officer. And it was a different taxi service, and they did charge us like $5 more. But we had to take it because because it was, the last train of the night was like 12:07, and we didn't want to get stranded till the next morning. So that was quite an adventure. The following week, March 13th, 2004, Ring of Honor has two events in the same day, an afternoon show and an evening show at the Rexplex. I missed that place too. In Elizabeth, New Jersey. And by the way, I forgot to mention, we took a Mike Johnson's bus trip to the JEP show back on February 28th, as well as this ROH show I'm telling you about. And this, by the way, was on the heels of a particular incident that supposedly happened with Rob Feinstein, like less than 2 weeks sooner. I mean, I don't know all the stories or all the details about it, but Rob wasn't even at this event. But the shows went on, and between shows, like after the afternoon show had ended, the crowd had to wait, couldn't stay in the room where the show was taking place. But it was at that moment when Tony and I ended up meeting Paul Rose. For those of you who don't know who that man is, he was the one wrestling fan known for yelling, "Give it to him!" or "Give it to her!" Real fun man, and another one who has since passed away on us. Wish he was still alive. And, that was quite a time after that one. The following week, March 20th, 2004, was my first ever NYWC show. And you guys know I buzzed about that promotion for a number of years. April 2nd, 2004, went to NYWC at Walt Whitman High School, Huntington Station. Let's see. And also later that month, April 24th, Jersey All Pro Wrestling had the Awesome Sacrifice, headlined with a match between Dan Moff and the late Mike Awesome. Well, after the show ended, Roy, I don't know if it was Roy or another guy that Randy used to know, or a guy Randy used to know, wanted to meet Awesome, as well as Vader, rest his soul, after the event, because they were both there. Awesome lost to Dan Moff, and after the match, Vader and Awesome double-teamed Moff to end that show. And I forgot what happened. Roy tried to see through as the curtains are being taken down. Roy tried to look back there, and I remember Randy saying to him, "Hey Roy, don't look back there unless you want to look at balls and shit." No, I don't think they were changing behind the curtain, folks. I doubt that very seriously. They probably were in a room somewhere. But the funny thing about this very night, I go into there's like a small room that has vending machines in it, and I went to buy a drink. Jay Lethal was on a cell phone with somebody. I don't know who he was talking to, but he wrestled and defeated Azrael on this event. And Azrael, I guess he decided to notice maybe he decided to stay in character or something. because Azrael comes in the room and he says to Lethal, "Next time, bitch." So I don't know if he was just trying to stay in character or what the deal was. All right. May 8th, 2004, NYWC had a great show in Long Island, and at the beginning, for the first two matches, I had my Patriot mask on, but during the second match, I took it off because it was so making me sweat so much. May 14th of that year, USA Pro Wrestling debuted at Club Amazur, where House of Glory eventually made it their home for big time shows, and that was a great show, which actually ended of USA Pro that night, which ended at 1 o'clock in the morning. Should be noted, when I was at NYWC in the early years that I was going, first few years, I remember Arwen Guerra and a few other ladies that sat with her, and I wish I could have met Arwen back then. I was a much different person in those days compared to now. All right, let me see here. Well, I'm not going to give you all the details of every show I've been to. I mean, I'm sure it's been interesting so far, folks. But we fast forward all the way to, let me see here. Okay, November 6th, 2004, Ring of Honor at the Rexplex in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And it was headlined with Jushin Thunder Liger and Samoa Joe against Low Ki and Bryan Danielson, who we know as Daniel Bryan. That night, there was a gentleman selling a bunch of Jushin Thunder Liger masks that I ended up buying one and wore it throughout the show. A few weeks later, it was November 19th, USA Pro Wrestling at Club Amazur, the Grim Reaper. I have my mask on. The Grim Reaper, I forgot who he wrestled that night. He noticed I'm wearing the mask, and Reaper says, "Look at this jerk off with the mask on." Funny thing was, the following night, November 20th, NYWC did a show at JFK, I don't know if it's middle school or high school or elementary school on Lake Avenue. And after the show was over, Tony Calvin was talking with Reefer, and I pulled the mask out to show that I was the one wearing that mask the previous night at USA Pro. Okay, well, December 10th, 2004, Tony and I trekked to Rahway, New Jersey for Jersey All Pro Wrestling season's beatings. And what an awesome show this turned out to be. And get this, the show ended at 12:30 in the morning. You're going to be surprised to hear this, folks. We were up on the platform, and every train heading towards New York City just zoomed by and didn't stop. And it was like, and we wound up meeting Joe Gardella, a.k.a. Joe from the Bronx, and Philip Burney, and you wouldn't believe what happened. After about 2 hours, we realized that we may have missed the last train of the night. We go downstairs to a taxi dispatcher, and, try to take us to New York City. The dispatcher said there was a cab ready, and you don't believe this, folks. The dispatcher tells us it was going to be $85 plus tolls. Of course, we said we made like the Sopranos and said forget about it. At the same token, had the four of us put our money together, I guarantee you we would not have left that driver a tip. I'm sure they gave us that price just to see how bad we wanted to go home. So we actually walked. I don't know how far we walked, but we found a White Castle that was open. We all got food. We all used the bathroom. And then around 5 a.m., we started to make our way back to Rahway train station because there was a train, I believe the first train of that day was like 5:30, 6 a.m. And it turned out that Alex and Duran, they actually went to a diner somewhere. I don't know where, if they stayed there all the hours or what they did. And we got on the train, and Tony, he kind of jinxed me. I forgot which part of Jersey we were in, and Tony says to me, "Fatigue is setting in." And I fell asleep, and I wake up, and the train pulls into Penn Station, and it was like between 6:30 and 7 a.m. We were back in New York City, and I got home like just before 8 a.m. Now that's talk about a long and winding road. Okay, now we're up to the year 2005. January 29th of that year, it was Jersey All Pro Wrestling presented their first ever wild card. I wonder if the NFL sued. Because that was a concept where all of their respective champions, supposedly, had no idea who was going to come out and challenge them for their titles. This was a good show. It was best noted for referee Sean Hansen's heel turn as he aligned himself with Dan Moff when it seemed like Jay Lethal had defeated Moff for the championship, but because Lethal had bumped into Hansen on the floor, Hansen reversed the decision, and I remember Papa Lethal, he ended up giving Hansen and Moff a sight for the bird watchers. But also we had I'm trying to think what other stuff from actually not that show, but as the year went on, let's see. Okay, February, March, April. April, let's see, April 05 we're up to. All right. April. Yeah, okay. May 7th, 2005, Ring of Honor starts doing shows at the New Yorker Hotel, located on 8th Avenue around the corner from the Manhattan Center, and they were pretty good at that time. ROH was the shit in those days, if you ask me. Let's see. A month later, which was the month of June, in Morristown, New Jersey, I was there to see CM Punk win the Ring of Honor World title from Austin Aries. And let's see, a week after that, I saw NYWC had a show where they had a TLC match pitting the SAT against Aerial Assault, James Newblood and Javier. Aerial Assault was victorious when they gave one half of the SAT to Spanish Fly through a table. Now, I don't know if it was when the table broke, I don't know if the metal rim around the table broke off and cut Newblood's arm. And I understand they had to empty the building out and call an ambulance. It was an emergency, and sadly, Newblood never wrestled again after that. Oh, let me see. July 05, anything stick out? July 05, July 2005, did anything stick out for those shows? Memorable stories, no. Okay, September 17th, 2005, Ring of Honor ran at, I forgot the name of the building, but I don't think it's in business anymore, out in Lake Grove. Pretty long trip with the Mike Johnson's bus, took me out there. And what happened was, what was I just saying? Yeah. And that night they had, that was the night Bryan Danielson won the world title from James Gibson, Jamie Noble. But the show kicked off with Jay Lethal taking on Low-Ki. Low-Ki had been suspended months sometime before, and Low-Ki said if he won, he would be reinstated. Low-Ki won the match, and the thing was, later in the show, they actually faced each other again, and Lethal won this time, the second match. All right, and then September 23rd of 2005, NYWC was at JFK School on Lake Avenue, and Team 3D, I don't know if this was their first indie booking after being released from the WWE months earlier. They joined forces with Plasma, who we know is Trent Beretta of the Best Friends in AEW. They defeated Mason Rage, Dickie Rods, and the late Crusher Dugan. Let me see. Okay, October 1st, 2005, Ring of Honor was at the New Yorker Hotel, and what a dream come true this was for me, seeing Japanese great Kenta Kobashi compete against Samoa Joe. For those who don't know, Kobashi had like some of the hardest chops in wrestling history. And for those who don't know, seen Kobashi live or seen video footage of him on YouTube or anywhere else, Kobashi would place an opponent in the corner, and I don't know if they were called machine gun chops, but he was known for hitting repeated chops to the chest in the corner. And I don't know if Kobashi was getting, I don't know if Kobashi hit more corner chops than he has ever done in his career. I mean, the whole match is on YouTube in case you folks are wondering. You have to see that for yourself. And Kobashi's like hitting chops and he's starting to slow down. He's getting tired and all of a sudden, he's hitting again, again, and again, and again. And even the crowd's eating it up and he's slowing down, and he starts chopping harder. Ugh. And even the camera zoomed in on the poor chest of Samoa Joe. Folks, if you can't take it, you shouldn't be in the ring. Kobashi was victorious in that matchup. All right, the following week, which was October 8th, NYWC ran a show at Patchogue Medford High School. And both Ultimo Dragon and Spike Dudley appeared for this event. And it rained that whole day and that whole night. And I'm glad NYWC didn't run another show in that building. I actually called the cab, and it took so long for the cab took ages to show up. I saw most of the wrestlers leave. I saw the parts of the ring being packed into the truck. And eventually I got to the train and went home. Oh, by the way, actually I forgot to mention, earlier that year, Matt Stryker signed with the WWE, and prior to debuting with them under contract, he defeated Mike Cruel at a show in the New Yorker Hotel, but sadly, that great match was not put on DVD, on the DVD of that very show. December 3rd, 2005. Ring of Honor had their first show ever at Chelsea Piers in New York City. And let me tell you, folks, the room was so damn small, there was only like one door to get in and out. You know, they did another show there in 2006, but I had to miss it due to the loss of my mother. But I'm glad they decided not to go back there. Like a fire trap or a death trap, seemingly. 2 weeks later, December 17th, 2005, during a match between Mikey Whipwreck and Rob Echoes, who later became Robbie E., Whipwreck took a little kid's soda and he threw it on them. Sadly, Arwen, Guerra, and her friend and these other ladies sitting with them, you know, the soda got all over their seats, and I don't know if they went to the ladies' room to get some towels to dry up their seats because they weren't gonna. One of them said, "I'm not gonna watch the rest of the show standing." And that was 2005, folks. All right, 2006. Oh boy, you ain't gonna believe this one, folks. Well, February 3rd, 2006. USA Pro Wrestling, by this point, was known as UXW, USA Extreme Wrestling. The main event was Sabu challenging Rhino for the heavyweight title, and all of a sudden, the fans started throwing chairs into the ring. One of the chairs hit Rhino in the head while he's on the apron. He stopped what he was doing. He stepped over the guardrail, walked right by me, and tried to go after the perpetrator. And somebody was holding Rhino back. And Atlas Security went after them. And somebody's wife or girlfriend threw her drink in the face of one of the guards before they were ultimately escorted out the door. And sadly, because, you know, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think, in my opinion, a few good matches or a few great matches does not make an awesome show. So as a result, I gave up on USA Pro Wrestling at that point because of that, because I figured I already had other indies tiding me over at that time. But later that month, which was February 25th, 26th of 25th or 26th, I could be wrong on the date. NYWC had a show at their home at the time, not the sportatorium that we know today. And there was one kid or teenager or guy in his early 20s sitting near me during a match between Papa Don and his former partner Havoc. This guy stands up and he starts flailing his arms like this. And Papa Don says something in our direction, and this guy flailing his arms, once somebody else in the crowd said to him, "Sit the fuck down, fairy." And later on, as I said, Papa Don says something in our direction, and this guy flailing his arms says to Papa Don, "I want to fuck you." And he caught Papa Don good on that one, because Papa Don was not expecting that. He was like frozen, caught off guard before going back to the match. All right, March 11, 2006, I went to see PWF New Jersey, which was run, I don't know if it was run by Damian Vargas, a.k.a. Damian Dragon. That was held in, they ran shows at Knights of Columbus in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, right across the street from Lyndhurst train station. Thought they booked a lot of NYWC talent on there, and I thought they had some good shows. And, well, there's more on them in a little bit. Let's see. April 22nd of 2006, Brian Myers and Brett Matthews, who became Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, had their swan song from NYWC, because about a month later, they had moved down to Georgia to be a part of WWE developmental territory, Deep South Wrestling. Okay, that's April. All right, we're up to May. Okay, May 19th. Kane's favorite day of the year. May 19th, Jack Sabbath launches Wrestling Superstars Unleashed, WSU. And I'm waiting for the show to start, and I get a call. My phone rings, and the guy I used to know, he says to me, "Come outside." So I go outside, and he's out there, and Romeo Rosselli, who was one half of the Heartthrobs, was competing on this show. And this guy I used to know that called while I was waiting for the event to start, he tells me, "Oh, I want to meet him, but I don't want to pay the money to get in." And I tell him, "What are you going to do? Stand out?" He says to me, "I want to meet this guy, but I don't want to pay the money, and people are looking at me like I'm going to steal something." And I tell him, "What are you going to do? Stand out here all night and wait for him?" I tell him and I even told him he may not leave the place through these doors. He may leave through another exit. Well, the guy never did come inside, and when I made my exit out the building, he wasn't out there waiting. So this guy, I'm not going to get into details because he's not worthy of any fame whatsoever, because he was basically put in the trash by the guy I met him through. Okay. Let me see now. May. Okay, now, June 17th, 2006. PWF New Jersey, which was running in Lyndhurst, Long Island. Wow. And we had wow. Yeah, the show, because that same night, Ring of Honor ran at the New Yorker Hotel, and Jersey All Pro Wrestling was in Aberdeen, New Jersey. PWF New Jersey in Lyndhurst that night didn't draw much. And before the show even started, they had all the fans, to show you how small the crowd was. They had all the fans sit on one side of the room opposite the camera. The main event that night, Tony Burma challenged Mana for the heavyweight championship. The funny thing was, they actually took it into the crowd, or lack thereof, and because of the hecticness, eventually by the time the next show rolled around, they renamed the promotion JRW, Jersey Rampage Wrestling. Great name, and I'll have more on that in a little bit, folks. Actually, no, yeah, I'll get back to JRW shortly, folks. But June 30th, 2006, First time ever, I got to experience the AWA of New Jersey, which we know today is Ace Pro Wrestling, which is run by Mike Morgan. Special thank you to Joe from the Bronx Gardella, who showed me the minibuses across the street from Port Authority Bus Terminal, and that's how we would go get to shows in Union City. And as time went on, I brought other people to see that product and see how great they had grown and become over the years. But thank you, Joe, on that one, Mr. Joseph Gardella. All right. As I said, I had more on Jersey Rampage Wrestling. On July 22nd, I believe that was the date, I could be wrong, they ran the first show under the JRW banner. And I don't know if Joe Rules had any say in the promotion, but he announced he was stepping down as owner or as president of the company, and because at the time his character was feuding with Spencer Jowitz, aka Dean Ripley, and Spencer was not there for this show, but he decided he was stepping down. But I guess because the company wasn't doing so well, and sadly it didn't. But that night, Joe Rules announced his successor, none other than Showtime Sean Sheridan, who entered the ring to the safety dance by Men Without Hats. And I forgot later in the show who he was arguing with. Might have been Damian Dragon, who that night went back to his Simply the Best character, and he came out to that song by Tina Turner. Okay. The point was, Sheridan said, was on the microphone saying, I don't want to waste too much of your time. I set my VCR to watch tonight's episode of Jeopardy. I want to get home as fast as I can so I can watch it. And at that point, I said, Jeopardy sucks. And Sheridan didn't hear me, but some people in the crowd did, and they laughed at the remark. Okay. I know, here we go again. I'm not giving you all the stuff, folks, because, not everything was memorable about this stuff. But September 16th, 2006, Ring of Honor's first ever event from the Manhattan Center in New York City, and was headlined by an appearance by the late Bruno Sammartino. Well, outside, waiting to get in, I see Takeshi Morishima and two other Japanese wrestlers. And among the people waiting outside to get in was Rob, a.k.a. Nick Knowledge. Now, this guy takes wrestling. And Rob, you see this, I'm sorry, you do take this too darn seriously. Morishima and the other two Japanese wrestlers walk by most of us fans that are waiting to get in. And not Rob, Knowledge, he looks right at them, and this is his very reaction. I'll kid you not, folks. They're walking by, and Knowledge does this. Fuck you, motherfucker! Not sure if they understood him. Also, it should be noted, December 16th, 2006, 3 days before my birthday that year, I met Jamie, who decided to sit right next to me for that show, and he was kind of to drive me to the train station after the show ended. And he came to many other promotions as time went on. Okay. We've reached 2007. January 20th of that year, Jersey All Pro Wrestling ran in Rahway, New Jersey, and I don't know why they took 20 fucking years to let the crowd in. And we basically froze our asses off on a cold night. The following week, January 27th, NYWC had their biggest event of the year, the Psycho Circus. And I get into the cab, waiting for the driver to see if any other passengers from the train needed a cab. A young lady comes in right next to me. The driver comes into the car, asks where she's going, and she mentions the address of where NYWC was running at the time, and I tell the driver that I'm going to the same exact place. While on the way over, the driver said he went to a show one night and got an autograph from Spider. And after we got out, she and we introduced ourselves to each other, and the ticket holders were let in first. After she and I got in the building, to my surprise, she stuck with me, and we sat together for the show. The show had ended and the crowd's clearing out. I gave her a hug, and I wish, and looking back, I should have asked for her phone number because I haven't seen that lady since that night, which was 13 years ago. Okay. March 31st, 2007. NYWC had a show, and I'm not sure why it took so long to open the doors and shit. Because I remember people were getting one guy in front of me, long after 6, I don't know if it was 6 o'clock or 6:30, they were going to open up. And I forgot what time what time it actually was, but one guy in front of me, he said, "Oh, this ain't worth it." One lady behind me with her kids were getting impatient, and the kids was like, "Oh, it's taking so long to open." And the lady tells the kids, she says, "Oh, if they don't open up in 5 minutes, we'll leave." And eventually, when they finally opened the door, so many fans were pushing and shoving, and one of the guards of Atlas Security, he had to take a stand and, tell everyone not to push and shove. Because I guess he was feeling, I don't know if he was being trampled or felt like he was being trampled. Let me see here. 2000, I'm sorry, yeah. Okay. All right, April 28th of 2007. Whew. NYWC runs a show, and I'm sitting, and these two kids, they're sitting right next to me, and we introduced ourselves to each other. And during a match between Bruno Marciano and Quiet Storm, one of these kids next to me, he was like telling off these kids sitting in the back, and one of the kids in the back referred to one of them, the kids next to me, as Pizza Face. And I tell this kid, "Hey, calm down, watch the show." And the other one sitting next to me says, "Exactly." Glad I don't see the one who was out of line. Glad he stopped going to shows. I don't even know how old that guy could be now. Let me see here. Okay, this is April of 2007. Let me see. Okay, June 24th, 2007, at the Boys and Girls Club in Garfield, New Jersey, was the debut event for Pro Wrestling Syndicate. On a hot Sunday afternoon, I had gotten pictures that day with Abyss, Coco Beware, Samoa Joe, Just Incredible, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and I got to go in the ring, got a picture with Tony Atlas and the late Rocky Johnson. Okay, let me see now. 2007, we're still going over here. Well, September 1st, 2007, AWA New Jersey renamed themselves Ace Pro Wrestling. Okay. All right. Okay, October 2007. Forgot the exact date, but I bought my green camouflage bag that you fans of the indie circuit have seen me with over the years, and pretty much no one, that's pretty much been my signature or seemingly my gimmick, because I'm still waiting for another wrestling fan to come to wrestling indie shows with a bag like I've got, and I have yet to see someone do it. But November 3rd, 2007, Ring of Honor ran at the Manhattan Center with the late Mitsuharu Misawa in action. Now, after buying our tickets, we went off to the Burger King, which used to be on West 34th Street, to have to eat. And what happened was a homeless guy came in while we're all eating and asked if any of us could buy him something to eat, and we all said no. And this infamous guy I used to know, I mentioned earlier on, as the homeless guy's getting away from us, the one guy who I told you that I used to know, he says, "Go away, junkyard dog." we eventually got out of there and we go to eat. We go to get in line, and the line was so big. The back of the line was at the corner of 8th Avenue and West 35th Street. As a result, we we finally get into the room where the show's taking place, and you wouldn't believe it, folks. The show had already started with El Generico, who we know is Sami Zayn, against Chris Hero. Okay, December 2007, we decided to go to the TikTok Diner at the corner of West 34th and 8th Avenue, and it turned out most Ring of Honor wrestlers would go there to eat after the show. And folks, I'm going to leave it here because this was only the beginning, and I've gone over an hour talking about this. So hope you'll be ready for part 2, folks. Hope you've enjoyed the journey so far.